Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christoph Plater. I'm the kind of the African equivalent of what Torben Stephan does in Asia. I'm the new head of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation media program in Sub-Saharan Africa, and I'm very happy to be here at the conference in Singapore and to have been asked to chair this afternoon's discussion on election campaigning and how to approach voters on social media and messaging apps. I think we have heard in the last 1.5 days a lot about how does one deal with voters, but we haven't discussed that much yet about the way, how do we campaign on social media and on messaging apps. And for me, one of the positive results of this afternoon's discussion would be if we manage to underline the fact that there are no ready-made solutions, no ready-made answers. The situation of campaigning on social media and messaging apps is different from country to country or from continent to continent, sometimes even from one municipality to the next. And we are going to hear about these differences from 3 very experienced panelists this afternoon who will report from the US, from India, and from the Netherlands. And we will hear from their different perspectives. The one as a campaigner, the other one as somebody who is working in the IT parliamentary committee of the second most populous nation in the world, and the third one who is approaching the whole issue and the whole topic from an academic point of view that is very enlightening and important. I'm happy to have here with us Vincent Harris this afternoon. I think each of you have seen him on stage before in the last 1.5 days. Welcome, Vincent. And I think, Vincent, you have been introduced on numerous occasions as, and I want to repeat it just to keep the record, as the man who was once labeled as the man who invented the Republican Internet. Then we will hear from Astik Sinya, who is a fellow at the Konrad Adenauer School for Young Politicians and a policy advisor to the chairperson of the Parliamentary IT Committee in Delhi. Astik is the person to tell us how a very populous society with very strict rules of class and caste changes through social media and how politicians try to come to terms with that in the campaigning. And thirdly, we have Maurice Ferrer from the Department of Communication Science at the Radboud University in Nijmegen, and he's an expert on online behavior of politicians and of voters. And I think we all know, for example, politicians who get very active on social media months before an election, a parliamentary election or a municipal election is coming up, and then they become digitally dormant again, and I think Maurice is going to tell us more about that. The plan has it that we are going to listen to the presentation of our 3 panelists that will each take 15 to 20 minutes, and then we will have a short discussion here on stage and then later discuss with the audience on the floor. I now welcome Vincent Harris on his presentation of campaigning with messaging apps. Welcome, Vincent.
Okay. Hello. Thank you. So I am giving a presentation that's similar to a presentation that I give at to folks working in Republican Party politics. So my understanding was that this panel is, how to approach voters. So I'm going to talk to you today like I would talk to folks at an RNC meeting in Washington, D.C. So first I want us all to get on the same page. Before I get into this, let me, again, since this is my last time up here, thank the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. I appreciate the invitation. You all do wonderful work, and I'm very grateful to have been invited, so thank you all. Let me get on the same page. I actually disagree a little bit with what was said earlier. I've done work on most continents, and on most continents, the use of social media is actually, I think, quite similar. And when you look at different countries and voters' patterns online, they're actually quite similar. Here's 3 Asian countries, and here's their top websites. I went through and I picked out ones that would be relevant for this conversation. But we can see very heavily Google, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, it's all the same, okay? It's all the same. I think Russia and China are probably two countries that differ in social media use patterns at a big perspective from these main platforms that we're talking about. So when I'm talking about and going through today how to reach voters on social media, I actually find it quite similar what we do in the United States, what's going on in Europe, and what we should do in Asia. So first off, I want us to be on the same page. We are not normal. No one in this room is normal. You are spending your time away from whatever you're supposed to do to sit here and talk about politics. And we think everybody talks and thinks like us in the political space. We think they know what we're talking about when we ask them if they support TTIP. We think they know what we're talking about when we bring up some politician's name. A lot of people don't know in the United States who their congressmen are or who their senator is. A lot of people, right? So why are people online? People are not online to hear from journalists or politicians. And as we talk through how I strategize today, reaching voters online, I think about this first. People are online to share cat photos. People are online to post pictures of their newborn children. People are online to talk about the soccer games. People are online to do online gambling and poker. People are online to play apps and app games like Candy Crush. My goodness, my wife would not stop playing Candy Crush, right? So that's why people are online. And when we're trying to talk to voters, we have to understand first off that we have a hard job. We have a hard job doing that because voters now have so many choices, they'd prefer not to read news and political information when they have other choices. There's a wonderful book, and I'm going to keep quoting from this book, but I bought this book for everyone I knew in politics for Christmas a few years ago. It's called Post-Broadcast Democracy by a Princeton political scientist named Marcus Pryor. In the book, Marcus Pryor talks about in our post-broadcast democracy world, when voters have a choice, I'm summing up the whole book now, when voters have a choice of news or nothing, like my grandparents' generation, when they went home back from work at 7 o'clock every night, they had to watch the news. They had no choice. They had those three news stations. Those three main broadcast stations all played news. They picked news. But in today's day and age, online, people want to share those cat photos before they want to hear about Sam Rainsy and Aung San Suu Kyi and what's going on in the economy and the complex global society as we talk about all these fancy issues that no one knows what they're what's going on. Okay, that's why people are online. People are online to be entertained. Gladiator, it's my favorite movie. Anyone else like Gladiator? Come on, yeah, it's a pretty good flick. So people are online to be entertained. You know who's so great at this? We know who's so great at this. Our president in the United States is so great at this. Is there anyone more entertaining? No, I don't think so. There's no one more entertaining. Posting photos on Cinco de Mayo of him with the taco bowl? My goodness, never would have thought of that idea. And it got the most tweets I think I've ever seen from a retweet perspective, right? He is so entertaining. You never know what he's going to say. He got $2 billion of free earned media attention during the campaign. Rand Paul, we raised, I think, $15 million or something like that. How can you compete with somebody who's getting $2 billion of earned media because of how entertaining that they are? That's where we can't separate anymore this candidate-centered society and this celebrity politics that we have, certainly in the United States. It's all celebrity politics. We can't separate Hollywood and DC anymore. And social media plays that up so well. You're seeing Kid Rock's running for Senate. Y'all, any of you like Kid Rock? Ba with the ba, you know that song? Running for U.S. Senate now in Michigan. Celebrity politics. This is fascinating to me. This was a Microsoft Canada study. It says that humans have a shorter attention span than a goldfish. Humans have a shorter attention span than a goldfish. So I'm sorry, folks, but when we're writing long policy papers and we're putting them online, only a bunch of geeks are reading them, okay? An average voter is probably not. It's probably not. This is sad. I can already see your wheels turning. Someone's going to ask me a question. This is sad. Democracy's headed down the toilet. What are we supposed to do? It is sad. My job, though, to remind you again, is to win an election and to get my candidate's message out in front of voters. And in this session, we're going to talk about how to get content in front of voters. I'm not saying that this is good for democracy. I'm not saying necessarily that this is going to help educate people. I'm saying if you want your content to be seen, it needs to be entertaining. I'm saying if you want your content to be seen, you need to grab their attention. There's a wonderful piece online by Michael Goldhaber called The Attention Economy and the Net. I really recommend that you read it. I'm probably going to write my dissertation around this notion of the attention economy because there's no way anymore online when there's so many choices to get a voter's attention unless you're entertaining. Think about this. 8 seconds. My goodness, we have 8 seconds to get their attention. How can we do that? Well, on social media that we're here to talk about, here are some ways that I advise my clients. First off, I put social in quotations. Why? Because if I looked at your Facebook pages, if I looked at your newspaper's Facebook pages, I bet the majority of what you're doing is talking at people. And I hate being talked at. I hate it. We were talking about this yesterday, about the sort of devolution of expert society. That's absolutely true. And people hate being talked at by experts. They want to talk with people. So what are some ways we did this on the Rand Paul campaign? I was so proud of the work we did on the Rand Paul campaign. The first thing that we did, we were the first campaign ever to release a high-resolution photo, image of our logo. I wanted graphic designers to be able to take our logo and to create their own images with it, right? People are so tight to their brand that they don't do that. But I wanted to unleash our supporters online. Something else that we did, we let our supporters, we gave them assets online, and we let them make a commercial for us that we then ran in Iowa. Something else that we did online, Rand Paul live streamed for 24 hours. I'm convinced, does anyone watch House of Cards here? I'm convinced that they took the idea from Rand Paul when they did a 24-hour live stream, because we did it first. We did it about a year before that. I'm very serious about this. We did it about a year before that episode came out. And Rand Paul, from the morning to the night, live streamed. It was one of our highest website traffic days because of how voyeuristic our society has become. Using supporters in your branding. Why do most campaigns just show pictures of the candidate? To sort of go back to this morning, isn't this about the people voting? Isn't this about other people? Or is this just about you? I think it needs to be about the voters. And I think that it needs to be very visual in terms of a conversation. So I'm going to show you some examples of some things that I've done. I'm going to start with this thing on the right. Snapchat. We created a scavenger hunt for the American Taekwondo Association. It's a client of ours. And if you went to their convention, we put little Snapchat filters over different locations. And we told people if they went to those locations, they took a picture with that filter, and they brought it back to us, we'd give them something free. So this type of advertising, called native advertising, is when voters or people, your brand advocates, put themselves in your ad. There's nothing better, right, than to actually have someone carry your message because they want to carry your message. This on the left, this was in a Texas congressional race where people were sitting watching a football game. We had 62,000 views at one football game of this football Snapchat filter. This was a game. People love to be entertained, to go back to this, because I try to practice what I preach up here. I don't want to be a hypocrite on my own presentation. So I try to create things for our clients that are entertaining. This is a game that we created for the National Republican Senatorial Committee for Mitch McConnell called GOP, where GOP is this elephant, and you could go and you could land on taxes, you could break the health care bill, you could do a bunch of those things. So this was very well played. We were collecting email addresses. We were getting lots of traffic. And there's a political scientist named Tedesco who writes about it, just makes sense, but information that's interactive is retained better. I think we would all probably would have agreed to that without needing to cite somebody, but I wanted to cite somebody, okay? So information that's interactive is better retained. So how can you have people interact with your content, not just read it? This was my favorite thing we did all last cycle. Hillary'sInbox.com. We won a few awards for it. It was pretty cool. You can go to Hillary'sInbox.com. It's still up. We have some fake emails of her. Huma Abedin and Bill Clinton pop up on your Gmail, and you can have conversations with them. And we have a bot there responding back. This got over 500,000 visitors. We didn't spend very much money on it. But you are having fun. You are being social. And you're getting your message out there at the same time. We've talked about this ad nauseum, I think, but actually engaging with people. This on the right. Répondez-vous vos questions. I took 7 years of French, so it was helpful when I was in France. But we asked people in France to leave a question for Madame Le Pen. Ask her a question. This is a platform called Ziggeo, Z-I-G-G-E-O. It allows users on any device to leave a question, and it's saved on the back end, because people always have concerns about brand. What if people say, "Are you a Nazi, Marine Le Pen?" Will they see that? No. All of this is saved on the back end, okay? So we could go through and sort out the questions, and she responded one by one to those questions. It's also helpful for what we talked about yesterday with search engine optimization. It's very helpful. Facebook Live, y'all, is everything on Facebook right now. You should be live streaming everything. We don't live stream enough. Live stream everything. Live stream, if you're a journalist, I would be live streaming after you posted something, talking about that article. I would be live streaming my conversations with people if they were in the article. I'd be live streaming with my editor. I'd be live streaming week highlights. I would be doing little live stream video newsreels like Sam Rainsey's party's doing. Live stream everything, video everything. And by the way, a small tip, if you live stream something, remember Facebook content is not searchable like YouTube. Export it and add it to YouTube. Export all of your lives and add your lives to YouTube. This is one of my favorite things that we do. It's for one of our clients, and we ask them if they know a veteran who deserves recognition. So every week we highlight another veteran, and we send this veteran a thank you thing in the mail, and we get them a free gift. It's also a great way to collect email addresses and to get information in a database. So people post, by the way, very touching true stories of their dad, their granddad, their wife, their daughter, whatever that it is. Their service stories, they send us in pictures, we create graphics with it, and then push that content out. That's using social media socially. That's not just pushing content out at people. Facebook frames, you all have probably seen these going around. Those are really cool. That's sort of the same thing as native advertising. This is I have 2 more slides, I think. This is my cheat sheet. This is my favorite slide for you all. This is my cheat sheet of apps you should all download to create content. With all these apps downloaded, you could probably do most of the things a political agency that you would pay would be doing, except for mine. We do other things too. So if you want to hire me, you can still do that. But this would allow you to do a lot, okay? So if I'm traveling with a client and I don't have time to send it back to my Austin office, I'll use this perfect video, and you can make a very nice video. It's sort of, it's better than Windows Movie Maker, and it's from your phone. So This on the bottom here, that will allow you to create tabs on Facebook for which you can embed content if you don't have your own development team. Okay? Lastly, because I would just like to leave you all with 4 potential books to read. This book on the left that I said, Post-Broadcast Democracy, it's very wonderful. This book was like this book, Entertaining the Citizen by Van Zunen. If you read that, you're going to say, wow, she predicted Donald Trump, because it's a really cool book. It was written a while back, and it talks about how voters need to be entertained. And if they're not entertained, I remember working in 2012 for Linda McMahon. Does anyone know who Linda McMahon is? Her husband, Vince McMahon, owns World Wrestling, the people that get up and throw each other on the ground and hit each other with chairs and stuff. And she became a billionaire through World Wrestling. And her campaign was another example. And guys, we're going to see this more and more and more as entertainment blends with politics. And then this book on the right talks about the attention economy, about where we're all moving, where social media is moving, which is to a very succinct, pithy media environment where everything campaigns do, where everything journalists do, needs to be delivered in sound bites. If it's not in a sound bite, you have much less chance that people interact with it. Just to repeat this, maybe I'll take some of the questions away. Sound bites do not equal good democratic civil society and an educated populace. Okay, I get that. But this conversation is about how to actively and properly use social media. And in order to be doing that well, things should be very, very short and succinct. So thank you again to the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. Thank you to everybody, and I look forward to your questions after everyone goes.
Thank you, Vincent, also for completing the reading list. I think we all go home with a very long reading list of suggestions for books that you advise us to read. If I understand you right, we have to look at politics as yet just another product which is being offered to people through fun and through free gifts. Is that what it boils down to?
Yeah, and crazy enough, the sort of commodification of politics is really just come to light in the last election cycle, where you are literally, in some cases, selling campaign ideas. So once Hillary's, let's take our Rand Paul campaign store. Rand Paul, if anyone knows anything about him, he's very much pro-privacy. He's against our national security administration. He's against our TSA. And one thing that was our best-selling item, one of our best-selling items on our campaign store, was an NSA spy blocker. So over your webcam, you could put this little piece of tape, and it said Rand Paul 2016. So we are selling Rand's policy, and we're selling something tangible to people. And Bernie Sanders did that too. He was selling, sort of eco bags that you could go to Whole Foods, which is one of our very nice and sort of bougie food stores in the United States, which I shop at. It's very nice. I like it. But there's a lot of liberals there. But they have very good deals, organic products, but you could bring this Bernie Sanders bag, this eco-friendly bag, to Whole Foods and stash it up. So directly to your question, sir, it's this commodification of politics, selling politicians like products, absolutely, but in some cases now actually selling products too.
But if we all have the attention span less than a goldfish, I mean, when does the message come? Just with the free gift, or what?
So I would say that the message comes in sound bites. Make America great again. Build the wall. I mean, those are sound bites that we remember. I don't know if any of you watched our campaign back in 2012. Herman Cain, does anyone remember that guy? What do you remember about him? Does anyone? Come on. He had one policy, 999. Does anybody remember this? His whole policy was 999. And it was a really good policy. I forget the details of it, but I remember 999. So actually using sound bites in campaigns from a repetition perspective And by the way, that's also a very good point. Don't be afraid on social media to post the same thing again and again and again. Sometimes on Twitter, we'll post the same tweet or very similar 5 or 6 times. Sometimes on Facebook, we'll post the same story 3 or 4 times, because different people, if you look at your Facebook insights, will be on at different times of the day. So posting the same thing in multiple times and in multiple ways helps to get that repetition going.
Thank you, Vincent. And from Texas and from the American experience, we move on to India. Please, Astik.
Could I have the presentation up? Yeah, okay. I'll probably stand as well then. All right. That's, in a way, how our politicians behave during elections. Thanks. Yeah. Okay. India's had a social media boom, in a way. And politicians have been using it. In fact, I experimented with social media in 2012 in a state, and people thought I was crazy, and we lost that election. But we saw some sparks in the sense, a few observations. Young people were interested. The older generation was getting hooked onto it because of the young people, you know, the kids in the house. And the women were interested because there were so many videos on, let's say, YouTube or being shared on WhatsApp about cooking or, you know, different skills that, again, their daughters or sons, you know, were sharing. So in a way, we transitioned from understanding that to 2014, where we experimented, again, with some new applications, which I'll, you know, talk about as we move on. So let me start with the first one, in fact. Okay, Google Hangout. Everybody knows Google and what it does. This was the first Google Hangout by a politician, the prime ministerial candidate, Mr. Modi. Next to him is a very famous Indian actor. And again, it combines with what's happening in the US and in some other countries. A blend of Bollywood or Hollywood in their case and the politician together. It was also the first time that you had a politician opening up to questions from sections of India who, in a way, were able to connect online. So he took multiple questions online, and that shows his vulnerability also, in a way, where he's moving away from giving a prepared speech where, you know, there's a distance, there's a barrier created by the podium. Here he is online, you know, millions of Indians and people on different platforms as well, because television was broadcasting this live as well. So this was the first social platform that was used. All right, this is offline. But how it connects online is because the messaging that we had on social media, the video clips that we were sharing on Messenger apps, on Facebook, on Twitter, we put the same video clips on the phone. And in rural India, if you move, let's say, 100 kilometers away from the city, you don't have connectivity. Your cellular services aren't really good. You have huge data prices back then, in fact, not now. So you put the videos on the phones, and for example, if I went to an audience of, let's say, 100 or 200 people, I switched it on, and it projected my messaging onto a blank wall or screen, and you had the people in the village watching it. So again, offline, online connect. You can see how it's working. All right, selfies. Once again, the human connect stories. Let's focus on the symbol there, the lotus symbol that he's holding in his hand. This selfie had something like 1 million retweets or something, if I'm not wrong. This is a selfie with his mother. These are, again, human stories. Indian politicians had never engaged online. They had never brought their family forward. And here you had a leader opening up his I mean, he was married, but he doesn't project it. He's very close to his mother, so he brought that out onto the forefront, unlike in the West, perhaps, where you have the children. In fact, in Trump's case, you've got the whole family coming up on stage. In India, you don't really have that. Again, this made a connect. 3D. Again, this is a new technology that we used rampantly across India. This is a beautiful example, another example of how we connected online to offline in a way. So the 3D technology was put on a bus. It traveled across different states in India. And as you can see, we had close to 10 to 12,000 people looking at this. So the candidate would be speaking in a closed room like this somewhere with multiple camera angle shots being made and telecast live across 300 locations in India. And sometimes we had a problem in the party. So the workers at the end would go to the regional party head and say, you know, I'm not happy with you. So why aren't you happy with me? You didn't let me shake hands with him. You didn't let me click a picture with them, with Modi. And we had to explain to them that, you know, it's a hologram. You can't really touch him. He wasn't there in person. And some of the people in rural India, they didn't believe the party heads. So there was the curiosity factor, and then there was the connect, online and offline again. Okay. Lots of people talk about trolls and bots. We had our own virtual army, and the best way to connect with them, the online army that you have, is always offline. Meet them in groups. And these are groups that you do in cities and in closed rooms. We had these, this one's in fact 2016, so we've carried it forward, in fact, but this is much older. Mission 272 is because it's the number of seats in the parliament. So we had these meetings where we would strategize with 50, 60 people, take their ideas and put them back online on how we could engage and strategize by using different social media messenger apps and social media platforms. All right, the ruralization of social media. That's something that's happened in India, where you've got these wonderful technologies, and they're not just urban-centric. For example, WhatsApp. It takes a considerable amount of data charges for a person who's not earning so much to have an internet connection, and then to be using WhatsApp for political use. What we did was everybody has access to phones and mobiles in India now. So how do you get them onto WhatsApp? So we sent a link of a group, for example, if it's I support Narendra Modi or Narendra Modi for PM, and we sent that link on SMS, and everybody who got an SMS would open it up, click the link, and automatically be included in the WhatsApp group. So this is how we bridged the gap between those who had the device but weren't connected online on our platforms. Okay, this cartoon pretty much sums up what happened in the elections and why this party and this leader was able to galvanize such a huge voter-based support online. It's not like the other parties weren't online, but they caught up too fast. They didn't realize how important social media was becoming for India. And most of India, in fact, is active on Facebook. Politically, WhatsApp today is perhaps our #1 messenger app for penetrating different segments of society across the rural and urban divide when it comes to technology. My next slide is going to give an example of how disconnected the opposition parties were when they were campaigning online. This is Mr. Rahul Gandhi's Twitter page. He's the son of a former prime minister and grandson of a former prime minister. Basically, he's a dynasty, parliamentarian, a ruler, in a way, if you were to call it. Notice the Twitter handle, Office of RG. RG stands for Rahul Gandhi. You can't be more disconnected than that. It's not even your name. It's the office. And this account was made after the elections. He didn't even have an account during the elections. This is just one example. I could go on and on about how miserably the opposition was, getting its act together on social media, but it would probably take a day. So, all right. My next slide is about, and I've shared this in another presentation yesterday, the power of synchronicity. All of these apps and tools that we have online, this is what's happening in 60 seconds. By the time I finish this slide, all of this would have happened. This is happening in 2017. The numbers would have been a little smaller in 2014 when we had the elections. But imagine putting up a post, a text message on SMS, using a similar message in 140 characters on Twitter, putting up a creative or a picture slide on Facebook, putting up a video that conveys the same thing on YouTube, later going live about the same issue in maybe 1 or 2 minutes, putting up that video again out to your users through the projector phone or a CD. Or another technology that we used was, again, comes back to the issue of freebies. Everybody loves freebies. So we put some of our campaign videos and creatives, Facebook slides as we call them in India, on small data chips, on memory cards, and we handed them out to our party workers and constituents. So they would put it on their phone, and they would watch the video, and we would embed the video with breaks, maybe 4 intervals in between, with 1-minute videos of our campaign. So people were watching a Bollywood movie, and in between there were 4 breaks in it, and they would watch our campaign messaging. All right, so this is what the Indian internet usage looks like right now. Roughly 300 million people if you go by various figures. This one projects it to 462 million people. So 1 billion people in India are still offline. That's a huge potential, and despite that, we were able to campaign effectively and galvanize support. How did we do that? Because we synchronized the online and offline world together. We had foot soldiers who were leveraging the offline world, bringing it online. So stories that were being discussed, conveyed, or that were happening at the grassroots were being projected back online. And that was being amplified by this whole army of volunteers. So at the end, I think the message is, whatever your tool or whatever the medium you have to synchronize and make sure the online connects offline. The offline reconnects online. That's the only way you're going to amplify your message. This is the annual growth, and I'm going to end with this slide. So from 2016, we've had a 40% jump in mobile handsets and users. We've had a 23% jump, and even if it's 2% or 3%, it's a difference of 1 million or so in India because of the population size. India's primarily headed towards mobile technology in terms of social media usage, where we've moved away from desktops, and we're not really there in terms of using tablets in terms of campaigns. Everything is on a handheld device, and the price of a handheld device now in India is less than $25. It's expected to go lower. The cost of data, 1 GB of data, or probably 2 GB of data for a month would be less than $3 or $4. So with the rise of mobile handsets, with the rise of lower data prices, and with the advent of 1 billion more people coming online, we will see localization of social media apps, messenger apps, and the Indianization, I should say, of all of this in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Astik, for this particular description of the Indian situation. Do you have any explanation why the opposition was so sleepy?
I think that the sad part is they're still sleepy, you know.
Well, good for you then.
There's a certain mindset and there's a certain way of campaigning in India that you have to have checks when it comes to certain offline campaigns. But when it comes to online, they didn't realize that the 850 million young people, they were aspirational and they were online. When a young person in India gets his first salary, he buys a smartphone which costs something like 20,000 rupees, and his first paycheck might be 20,000 rupees. That's something the opposition did not realize. They weren't connected. And that's why they probably failed to see that everybody is moving towards this new platform, and that's where their message has to go. They were still stuck with public rallies and print advertisements and television ads. That's useful and that's important, but then this is the new technology that's coming up. And you have to synchronize. That's where they went wrong.
And how important was, I mean, there was this very impressive picture that you showed of Prime Minister Modi. How important was it that he actually showed voters and the audience and the population, the citizens, that he himself knows how to do a selfie? It's not his army of digital warriors who do the job for him, but the Prime Minister himself knows how to. Is that important?
I think Modi, in India, again, and across some parts of the world, leaders, there's a distance between the leadership and the citizens. Modi was able to bridge that gap by the use of social media. When he used to set the agenda, when issues were raised, when people pointed allegations or called him names, for example, they called him a tea seller. And in fact, he did sell tea on railway platforms. He used it to his advantage, and he built a campaign which was called Chai Pe Charcha, which means dialogues over tea. And then it was a platform like this, offline again, where he would discuss various important issues that connected to these 850 million people on women's empowerment, on national security, on youth employment. And again, that was juxtaposed online, and that was spread against to a wider audience. And how did that connect with rural India that I keep harping about? The tea guys, the tea shops, they had Modi cups. So if you went to them during election campaigns, they would serve you tea in Modi cups. So that's, in a way, branding and merchandising as well. So he was able to innovate at a massive level, and he was able to demonstrate that he was connected to the guy, the farmer, the shopkeeper who was selling tea, but also connected to the IT professional sitting in Mumbai or Bangalore or New Delhi. And that's the message and the power that he's taken back once he's become Prime Minister, and it's continuing even today.
Thank you. We move on to Maurice, who is going to explain us more from an academic point of view about voters' behavior and politicians' behavior on social media.
Thank you. Let me get this. So, what I'm going to present right now is some fresh analysis of Facebook data I collected earlier this year. We had, in March 2017, we had elections. And in Europe, these were considered important elections because these were the first elections after the Brexit announcement by the UK. And because populism in the Netherlands is also on the rise, as it is in the rest of Europe as well, people were quite anxious to know what is going to happen. In the end, Geert Wilders of the Party for Freedom did not win the elections. He came in second. And well, you may know that the Netherlands is a multi-party system, meaning that we have multiple, well, these elections we had 28 parties participating in the elections, which is ridiculous, to be honest. And we had over 1,000 candidates, whereas there are only 150 parliamentary seats to be handed out. So it's ridiculous. Because nowadays the parliament is really fragmented, and the only way to get a majority for a vote or for a coalition is to build coalitions. And now, well, as I said, the elections were in March. We still do not have a functioning government because they are still negotiating about it. And it'll probably take yet another 1 or 2 months before it's finalized. So once it's finalized, they'll have a session of 3.5 years before the next elections. So that being said, the Netherlands is also known for its massive use of social media, not only by regular people. Twitter, relatively speaking, the Netherlands is very active on Twitter. As I said yesterday in another session, our hashtags, our trending topics reach a global status every now and then. It is said because we are very active on Twitter on the one hand, and at the same time we type very accurately, so all the hashtags add up to each other. So basically we've been a Twitter country for political communication. We've had, in 2009, the European Parliament elections, 2010, national elections, 2012, again, national elections, and now we have again yet elections. And I sometimes compare the Netherlands with the new Italy, because ever since 2000 we've had very many elections because there are political troubles and the government falls and we have to have early elections. Hopefully we will not have this again, but with a coalition of 4 political parties it's quite likely. But so Twitter was quite dominant in electoral campaigning. But now in 2017, for the first time, Facebook was really used on a massive scale, not only by politicians or political parties, but also by the people. To get a grasp on how political parties use Facebook as a medium to communicate to its citizens and the audience responses to these messages, I collected data while basically starting early December last year. And well, the software is still up and running, so I can also track it during the formation period. But I'm now going to show you some findings for January 1st up till election day to see how parties use social media or Facebook in this respect, and to what extent people are reacting to it. This is a structural analysis, meaning that we're not looking at incidents, we are looking at structural patterns, regularities in communication and regularities in certain types of reactions. So, and basically this is a sort of a helpful scheme to understand how I would look at the data. In the end, electoral campaigning is all about getting as much votes as possible. And you can imagine we have 28 parties, so there will be 27 losers. But you can try to get enough votes to get at least some seats in parliament. On the other hand, we have party characteristics, message characteristics, and so-called time dimension. Because, as I said, I'm looking through time, how the campaign develops over time, and to see whether there are changes over time that might affect the outcome variables. And in the middle, we have audience responses. so-called sentiments, and these are based on, for now, based on the like, the haha, the wow, and the angry buttons, and empirically they make up 2 dimensions: the positive evaluations of Facebook posts and the negative evaluations of Facebook posts by the audience. So if we look at the number of posts posted by political parties, we see this happening. So on the left hand of the scale we see January 1st, and on the right hand scale we see election day. And I made a three-part analysis for governmental parties on the top, and these are the new parties, and of course there are many, and the lower graph are the opposition parties. Well, basically these are daily numbers of daily posts, and you can see that particularly at the beginning it basically is, well, hardly exceeds 5 posts a day. So that's not a lot. And it moves on, and gradually in the last 2 weeks you see it rapidly increase, particularly for article number 1, which was a fringe party trying to counterattack discrimination. And the party leader was heavily criticized on Facebook and subject of hate crime. And they were very active on election day. Interestingly enough, the 2 parties in government, the Liberal Party and the Labour Party, they stayed dormant. And this is a strategy you see often. These are the parties normally because they're in power. The other ones have to take action, like the new parties and the opposition parties. So they are sort of leaning backward. Okay, you opposition parties, you have to campaign because we are already in power, so we'll do nothing. And you see the number of posts doesn't exceed 4 or 5 throughout the entire campaign. And the other parties, who have everything to gain, really campaign during these last 2 weeks. Oh, wrong button. Weekdays. On what specific weekdays do they post their articles? And as in many countries, weekends are slow periods, and you see Saturday and Sunday are hardly any posts posted by the political parties. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are most active. Probably because also the most events take place during these days. Still, if you want to get from a strategic point of view, you might want to circumvent these Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and particularly post on days where other parties do not post, because then the likelihood of getting audience attention is much larger. This is the number of posts by parties and by day. So here you see the government party. This is basically the same as one of the previous. Oh, sorry. So these are quite dormant. The government parties and the new parties and the opposition parties really increased their number of articles. Positive and negative evaluations. These are the number of positive evaluations across time and per article, per post. And what you see is based on the articles that were posted. In the early stages of the campaign, the number of posts, number of positive evaluations of the post are relatively stable, and you see that at the end of the election campaign, it really spikes. And interestingly enough, the number 1 is Forum for Democracy. And this is a new French party, didn't have any seats in parliament, and because of their campaign, they totally ignored offline campaigning, because, well, it was basically a 3-man party. They basically did everything on Facebook, and they were apparently quite successful because they won 2 seats in parliament. The second one is the Green Left, and this, well, it's not a populist party, it's a green party, but it's a young party leader. The older ones were disbanded because they were not so successful. And now they really had a momentum offline and online campaigning, and they used specific apps to communicate with citizens and potential voters. And apparently it paid off because they really won during the elections. The third one is the Progressive Party, a long-time opposition party. They're doing quite good on social media, particularly on Twitter. And the VVD is the Liberal Party, which is in government right now. And all the other ones are, well, a large bunch and not really successful or not really unsuccessful. This is the negative evaluations. Just picking this slide, and this tops at 25,000, and the next slide tops at, well, close to 4,000. So the number of negative evaluations is way lower than the number of positive evaluations. So apparently you could say that positivity rules on Facebook. Whether this is because of the algorithm, or whether it's because of the messages, or whether it's because of the people that visit Facebook are such positive people, I'm not sure, but positivity rules. I remember there's a saying about the ice bucket challenge and the riots in Ferguson, that on Facebook the ice bucket challenge was mostly popular, and the riots on Facebook, the riots in Ferguson were mostly posted on Twitter, indicating, well, for hardcore news and also negative news, Twitter is the platform, and positive news is for Facebook. And this seems to substantiate that. Okay. So another correlation is the number of comments and the number of positive evaluations of posts. So normally I would guess that comments are mostly about, well, I disagree with you and you're full of this and that. But apparently there's a large correlation between engaging with the Facebook post and the degree the post is considered a positive thing. Looking at the numbers of shares, how often is a Facebook post shared, this is also a strong positive correlation. So apparently people who like a specific post are more likely to share it as well. This suggests, of course, for strategic purposes, that you should try to make an as positive message for Facebook to increase, through social networking, the reach of your post. Interestingly enough, governmental parties like the Liberal Party and the Labour Party received the most number of positive evaluations. The opposition parties came in second, and the new parties came in last. And this is irrespective of how many articles they posted. This is purely because, well, apparently there's nothing positive to say about them. And what is most positive? A status update on Facebook. And the least positive evaluation is, of the least number of positive evaluation is going to links and events. Looking at the negative ones, again, there's a positive correlation between the number of comments and the level of negativity. So apparently, this can coincide, having positive communication, positive evaluations and negative evaluations. apparently, negative posts are also shared. So this is a bit counterintuitive. Why do you share positive and why do you share negative? Probably there are different motives behind this, but it's interesting to see that apparently it's quite a similar pattern. Again, similar pattern for negative evaluations if you look at the type of party. So again, the governmental parties receive the most negative evaluations, and the opposition comes in second and the new parties as last. Links are considered the most negative, and well, yeah. Now we're coming to basically what politicians and political scientists call the Holy Grail. Can we predict the election outcome? And to be honest, I still find it a daunting exercise because, well, political scientists have a hard time predicting the election outcome. I believe in the US there were 5 or 6 large institutes trying to predict the election outcome, and there was only one that succeeded in showing that Trump will win the campaign. Also in other countries, it's very hard to predict the final outcome. Whether this is due to a lack of data or inferior models, or because, well, a high or a low voter turnout, we don't know. And of course, communication scientists are a bit arrogant, and they sometimes think, well, what they can do, we can do. I try to hold it off, trying to predict the number of votes, but I'm still going to present the findings thus far. So how can you increase the number of votes? Apparently there's a strong correlation between posting a video and increasing the number of votes. So apparently, if you post a lot of videos, the more videos you post on Facebook, it's more likely that at the same time you will reach more votes than if you don't. This also holds for links. There is, of course, for videos, not an indefinite effect because of budget reasons. You can have low-grade videos using your smartphone, but if you want high-grade productions, this costs money, and you cannot indefinitely put videos online. The more positive evaluations these Facebook posts receive, the more likely you will receive votes. This seems, well, quite obvious. The more positive people are about your party or your party posts, the more votes you get. And interestingly enough, it is not statistically significant, but there seems to be a slight trend that even negative evaluations has a slight upward trend to getting more votes. That's not what you would expect. Luckily in the statistical sense is that it's not statistically significant, meaning we should conclude there is no effect of negative evaluations. Okay, I'm rounding up, yeah. So the comments count, the more engaging, the more votes you get. This is interesting. The more you share it, the less likely you will get votes. Oh, that's quick. So, okay, this is a first analysis of the Facebook data. We are still trying to set up a definitive model because it's quite complex. And what we did now with the sentiment analysis is purely based on the sentiment buttons Facebook offers. But messages themselves, the text themselves, also have positive and negative sentiments. So is the party a positive or a negative communicator? This is something to be done with machine learning. with artificial intelligence, trying to data mine, to text mine the text, and extract sentiments in that respect. This is something for the future, but if we do this and we succeed, then we have a substantial model for explaining or predicting the elections.
Thank you very much, Maurice.
Yes, last sentence. Still we have 4 years' time, hopefully, if our government doesn't fall in the meantime. Thank you.
Thank you. Maurice, could you, because we have learned from the examples in the US and India that it's apparently always very, 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 very good or very, very positive to create a positive message.
Mm-hmm.
And the message should come along with a small goodie or a token or something like that. Could you briefly elaborate on the content of these messages that you evaluated? What were they saying? Were they and the negative likes or the dislikes? Were they dislikes of messages attacking the political opponent, or what were they?
Well, I did an analysis of messages that received a large number of positive likes, but also negative evaluations. So these are polarized evaluations. And for instance, the party lead messages by the political party Article 1. She is a colored party leader, and she wants to battle discrimination, and she's against Black Peter in terms of St. Nicholas. She received very many positive and at the same time very many negative ones, because in that respect the issue of discrimination in the Netherlands is really polarizing. Status updates mostly get positive evaluations. Social care is really divided in the sense that you also get positive and negative evaluations. So,
so from your findings, what would be the conclusion for a political party in the Netherlands in order to campaign for voters? What would you suggest to them?
Well, positive communicate. There's a method called negative campaigning, making your opponent look bad. That's not what you should do. It should be about the content, and you can criticize, but real negative campaigning is not working. So in that sense, positive communication. At the same time, don't overdo it, because then it seems to be a trick, and people see right through that. So it's difficult to find the good balance between sincere positivity and fake positivity, let me put it this way. So we have fake news and now fake positivity.
Thank you. Vincent had a remark to your presentation. So I have been on the other side of some of these studies, and I've been on the other side of some of the press stories saying that some of my clients are doing worse on social media than our opponents. So I just want to caution that and explain a few more things. One is that Facebook has what's called dark posts. And if a campaign is actually doing a good job campaigning, they're not posting everything to everyone. If they're doing a good job campaigning, they're actually taking a message and posting it just to certain people, and that's not public. So researchers and journalists can't see that. So if we're coming to conclusions at all, saying, for example, there was a press story in the United States that said Donald Trump is losing on social media because Hillary Clinton's posting 50 times and he's posting 12. Well, Donald Trump was actually running a better effort because he was posting in individual states. So if a journalist is in New York, they couldn't see what he was posting in Texas. So that's one comment. Second, the number of posts, there was mention of a number of posts being better towards the end and being more. More is not always better, and some posts, if you post too much on Facebook, Facebook's going to think you're spam, and they're going to suppress you in the algorithm. So for my clients, I recommend posting 2 to 3 times every day. On election day, we might post 5 or 6 times. If you're posting 15 times like that one party, their stuff is going to be suppressed, and they're not going to get able to be seen a lot out there. A couple more things. one thing that I do, because I work with a lot of campaigns of candidates that have really upset electorates, I ask people to give that angry face. I say, are you pissed off that someone's taking your taxpayer dollars? Use the angry face. So I'll ask people for negativity. And in that sense, and this kind of, I think, gets to what you were asking, sometimes negativity isn't negative about that page. Sometimes negativity is actually what that page wants. And engagement is what I want from my clients. And sometimes it's better when people are pissed off and they click that angry sign. That actually helps in the algorithm rise and float to the top of the news feed.
Thank you, Estig.
Yeah, I just want to add, you can hear me, right? Yeah. I'm not going to name the individual of that particular party, but it's a primary opposition party in India. And I don't want to name both of them because it's on the record. But so there was a campaign run against that candidate, saying that he's not intellectual enough and he's not fit to be in politics. That person is a dynastic individual who comes from a political family. And today we're in a situation where anything he says, even if he's talking something really serious and he's making sense, you have social media abuzz making fun of him, cracking jokes about him. Because of that, the atmosphere in which his whole being was construed by this particular party and during the campaign, that anything he believes in or says has to be a joke, has to be incorrect. So even after the elections, even if you see his Twitter posts or Facebook posts or comments to students at universities, if he forgets something, and he's very forgetful, the soundbite, the video, it's amplified online and he's made fun of. That's one thing. The thing about negative campaigns, we did a campaign as the BJP. The campaign in English would translate into the people won't forgive you. And we picked up the negative things the incumbent government had done in the last 10 years, on various issues: unemployment, lack of funding on infrastructure projects, terrorism, national security, public health. And we put out video messages. And that worked beautifully because people picked that slogan up and they added their own message and they put it online. So I think that campaign became a very positive campaign, even though it was negative. So for us, in our Asian context, it worked very well.
Well, I'm sure there are national differences, even though there are regularities. So in the Netherlands, we have a socialist party, and they were basically against everything. And they tried to set up a campaign like that. And the first time they did it, it worked. Well, no, it didn't work. And the second time they continued with this strategy and it didn't work either. And the third time they changed the strategy and it did work.
Sir, I mean, that seems very anecdotal, though. I mean,
sure.
It's pretty accepted in political science that negative campaigning actually works. It raises voters' education about issues. It suppresses voter turnout of your opponents, and it works. That's pretty much well-defined political science.
There's a difference between negative campaigning and being negative all the time. So if I communicate a constant negative campaign about the other one is doing a bad job, instead of emphasizing my good points as a party, that doesn't work. Parties in the Netherlands mostly depart from the standpoint, we want our program to be known with the people, and not constantly saying what the others did for a bad job. So maybe that's because also the thing is, negative campaigning can have detrimental effects after the elections, because we have coalitions. If you attack someone fiercely, maybe after the elections you have to collaborate with them. And if you are too negative about them, the trust between the partners is destroyed and you will not be able to form a coalition. So that's why negative campaigning is not advisable in the Netherlands.
We have had very interesting insights into social media campaigning in America, in India, and in the Netherlands. I'm sure there are quite a few questions in the audience. To our panelists here, you're most welcome. Yes, the lady at the back.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Junie Lau. I'm an independent video producer and journalist in Singapore and a media trainer. I know the social media platforms do have teams to help with government relations, campaigning, so on and so forth. To what extent have you all, maybe Ashtik and Vincent, approached the platforms for assistance, and what sort of assistance do they actually render to your teams?
That's a great question. This is very different in the United States and every other country. We are blessed that most of them are located in the United States. They are intimately involved in major campaigns. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton had staffers from the major tech companies embedded in their campaigns. Okay, so there is daily communication with Facebook, with Google, with LinkedIn, with Twitter, on and on. Yahoo, everyone you've heard of, they were very active in each campaign. One of the coolest things I've ever done was with the senior Rand Paul presidential team, we went out to Mountain View, and for the entire day, they brought in all their experts. Google brought in a bunch of experts, and they helped our campaign on ideas. We had brainstorming sessions. We had, there were rules. You got to put your phone away. This is about brainstorming. It was an ideation session. It's just like you'd think on some Google movie where we were putting, weird Post-it notes up on boards. And actually, it was that day that I came up with a 24/7 live stream for Rand Paul, which we ended up executing. So Google is very helpful. I was emailing with Twitter yesterday about another client of mine. They're very helpful getting Twitter handles for our clients. So, I still work, even my abroad work, I'm working with our American counterparts. Now, what's in it for them? Coin, right? Money.
And they would do it with everybody.
They'll do it with everybody, but they'll spend the most, with every party. So it's split. Facebook has a Republican team, so actually a lady who used to work for me works at Facebook now, so that's a great in of mine. And she's on the Republican team. So there's a Republican team and a Democrat team at the two major parties. But why are they given time to work with us? Because we spend money with them. Because they know if they work with me, I'll advocate to my clients to spend money on their platforms. So they're incentivized because I turn around and I give them, our clients, advertising dollars. But they've been incredibly helpful. They're very good partners. They even, there's some perks. I got invited to dinner with Eric Schmidt from Google last year too during the Rand Paul campaign, which was really cool, I would say. And Rand Paul, one reason I was so proud to work for him, there's so many people in Silicon Valley that supported his kind of get government out of my face type mentality. So when I was working for him, especially, there was actually people at these companies. They're mostly either liberal at the company or they're libertarian. And a lot of them are libertarian, so that was a really cool thing.
How do you go about that in India, Astik?
Yeah. You got to understand, 2014 was the first time, the impact of social media was being seen. We had 160 parliamentary constituencies in India that were going to see the impact of social media. Now that number's grown to 300, 350 or something. We didn't have Facebook, Twitter, or Google employees embedded with the prime ministerial candidate or the party's team, but we did have support from them. And that support has grown manifold after the elections because, again, it comes down, it's a business, and 1.3 billion people, it makes sense to have all of them using Google, Facebook, and Twitter, So in terms of getting accounts verified, in terms of the new posts that you can do, in terms of how you can reach a wider audience, how do you start doing paid advertisements, all of that was done during engagement sessions with them. Um, I don't think Facebook Live was available in 2014. It came much later. But since then, they've been active, pretty closely with the party and, the prime minister. In fact, Mark Zuckerberg hosted the prime minister for a town hall at the Facebook headquarters when he was visiting. So I think we're going to see more of that in the upcoming elections. 2019 is a year which everyone should watch out for, because that's going to be the real test of social media for the BJP in a way, because all the other political parties have come online in a big way. Their accounts are verified and they're understanding how to use social media better. So it won't be a match of rivals. I'll probably not accept that, but it'll be a good contest to watch.
You
And
got to
meanwhile
ask
then-
Facebook, man, for one of these cool shirts that they sent me next,
And by then, maybe even the opposition will have found out about their telephone numbers to get in contact with them. Reese, you wanted to make a comment because you grabbed the mic.
About political parties and Facebook in the Netherlands, there was not so much contact between parties and Facebook for campaign purposes, but there was contact because of fake news. And they wanted to assess to what degree there was fake news in the Netherlands on Facebook. And in collaboration with another university, they did some tests. And luckily, there was hardly any fake news that could bias the election outcome. So that's a good thing.
We need a microphone here in the middle. There are two questions. Yes, you first and then...
Astik, one question. You talked about the volunteers that helped Narendra Modi during the election. Are you still using, are they still helping the Prime Minister right now?
I don't want to give too much away.
This is
So-
off the record.
Yeah. So yes, there's a sizable. Let me put it this way: they're not paid, employees of the party or the prime ministerial office. They're people who relate to the ideology or to how he is as a human being and the work he's doing. So when he puts out a tweet or there's a new campaign that comes out, these people automatically come online to support that in the various constituencies, urban, rural, wherever they are. If the opposition is doing some trolling or bashing online, you would have these hundreds of thousands of followers coming online and responding back. So as a party, we were accused of having trolling the opposition and having bots and all of that. But what we're seeing right now is this, army of people who's they really feel about the man and his ideas, and you no longer need to pay them, or you no longer need to, do it in a systematic manner, as some political parties do. It's organic, and that's the best way.
I don't think this really answers your question. But
Well, it
maybe
does. I think it's quite open. Can you define
Okay.
automatically? They come automatically online.
Okay, let me put it this way. If he's a Trump supporter and he relates to an issue that Trump's tweeted about, right? He may want to defend Trump on that issue if he's logging on to Twitter, or if there's a news story breaking that, let's say, Trump's trashed Obamacare and he feels Obamacare was crap. He would want to tweet about it and say that this is why it was wrong and this is what should have been done. That's what's happening with Modi and the BJP in India.
Thank you, Astik.
you all the secrets.
That's why you have paid advertisements online. And Facebook wants you to do that.
all right.
Question is to Maurice. Don't you think it's not about negative campaign? I think the political parties in Netherlands, don't you think they start with the negative mindset that they are not going to get the full majority? You are not going, 100% into a campaign outrightly to get a full majority. That is what is stopping you to pull all your resources to have a negative campaign, go all out. Post-election, it could be a common minimum program on certain issues on various political parties come together and form a government. But before the election campaign starts, if the political party thinks that we have to enter into a coalition agreement or formation of a government, I think that's too negative. Then how do you expect people to vote for a full majority in favor of a, that is one. Second, my question to the gentleman in the middle, do you also evaluate various political systems all over the globe? How social media is changing things, because people look at US elections, how dynamic they are and all that. And where do you see in Europe and in Asia, what is lacking as far as the US elections are concerned?
These are two questions, Maurice, but I still plead with you for a brief reply.
Yes. Well,
Failing to set the agenda, I think that's something we're curious about. Are the political parties failing to set the agenda? And that's why they're doing negative.
No, the thing in the Netherlands is we have a few general parties and many single issue parties. So the most parties set the agenda clearly for their own party. But the problem right now in the Netherlands is Geert Wilders' Party for Freedom is second party, but nobody wants to form a coalition with him. So the result is, if there's a coalition, it really will turn out to be at least 3 or 4 political parties. Now, the formation has been going on for several months, and already 5 different options have crossed its path, meaning what type of coalition will be the result is totally unclear at the start of the election campaign. Therefore, negative campaigning all outright doesn't work, because you might end up with that particular party in the coalition. And we also have a culture of negotiation and collaboration between parties and between employers. So that's why negative campaigning doesn't feel good in the Netherlands.
And then the second question concerning the comparison with have you done studies on other nations?
No. Well, I have done a comparative analysis on Twitter in 5 countries: Japan, Korea, the Netherlands, the UK, and Canada. But this was mostly about social networking and tweeting behavior, not the content.
So I will.
A brief reply.
Yeah, I think he asked me the question, so I'll reply. Privacy laws vary in each country, but in countries that allow campaigns to capture data and information and lead generation, that's not going on. It's not going on in Europe. It's not going on in Africa. It's not going on in Asia. Campaigns, social media, guys, is one surface. It's like an iceberg. It's the tip of the iceberg. And we post things on social media and don't realize all the time we can be capturing information back that's useful to these political parties forever. That's what's not going on, is we all sit in rooms and ballrooms like this and we talk about what's sexy. There was one panel, I think, about data here. That's what's more important, is how do we take what we're all seeing on the front end and capture information, email addresses, preferences of people, what types of content people are liking and not liking, and adding it to some kind of voter record so that we can go and then build on top of that information.
Thank you very much, Vincent. Thank you very much to all 3 panelists. I think we have tried to underline this afternoon that there are common issues, but that there are also differences if you look at different countries. I mean, Texas is not India, and India is not Africa or the Netherlands. Thank you very much for your contributions, and thank you, the audience, for listening so attentively.